At the end of the outward journey, there is a resting place of apparent cessation of motion. The gravitative centers of all masses are resting places in the appearance of motion. The end of the outward journey to mass is the point of north toward which all resolving mass is heading. The end of the return journey to plane is toward the south, toward which all dissolving mass is returning. The return journey is repeated in all of its activity, gyrating with growing unsteadiness, with gradual expansion and extension of orbit, volume, temperature, time, and other dimensions in periodicity, until all mass has disappeared in the south planes of inertia. The return journey of mass to the inertial resting place in plane is made with the assistance of higher potential electric force behind it and with the less resistance of lowered potential ahead of it. All dimensions contract on the outward journey to mass and expand on the return to plane. Mass is stored energy. Mass is a record of the exact quantity of energy utilized in its own production. The only energy of the universe is the life principle of the thinking substance of mind. The exact quantity of energy represented by the great sun of our solar system, with its crushing pressures, its intense heat, and its inconceivably vast mass, does not represent more energy in that form than in the concept of that form in inertia. The exact energy of the sun, now concentrated in an almost perfect sphere, was once spread out over an extended area in inertia, merely as a pattern of what it was eventually to be. As the sun is but one part of a solar system, and as the entire solar system is but one of the many pressure walls of a vast wave, and as the entire constant of the wave is simultaneously marked out in inertia by the electric pole and the magnetic base, before being produced in sequential intervals, the dimensions of our own particular waves are beyond human imagination, even though within exact computation. It is well to give some thought to nature's purpose in thus storing energy in the form of mass. It is also well to consider carefully nature's plan of effecting this purpose and the mechanical processes adopted by her in transforming her concepts of form into their appearances of reality in motion. Nature's processes are clearly visualized in the various simple effects and periodicities with which we are perfectly familiar. It is only necessary to coordinate these effects in their orderly sequence by putting them together part by part in order to clearly comprehend this vast but simple plan. We are too prone to take various effects singly without coordinating them, or if we take effects in groups, we are too prone to stop there without attempting to trace them back to their common beginning and ahead to their common ending. Take, for example, the orbits of our planets. We measure them and study them as orbits, but there we stop. The most careful study and charting of orbits alone accomplishes nothing. We must trace back to the beginning and follow on to the ending every stage of the journey to and from mass of which these orbits are but a part. By thus going back and charting the states of motion of this solar system as indicative of relative positions in their common journey, these orbits and their eccentricities will have a different meaning for us. The purpose of nature is to produce and to reproduce the ideas thought out by the image-making faculty of universal mind. Mind creates that which mind thinks. To produce and to reproduce ideal in form, or in other words, to quicken the concept with what we call life, motion must be given to the universal mind substance out of which the form of all idea is born. Inertia overcome by the energy of motion always ends in mass. Mass is the pigment with which nature paints all of her pictures, with their illusions of dimension, upon the cosmic canvas of the inertial plane. From the concept of form to the perfection of form as represented in the sphere, the perfection of orbit as represented in the true circle, the perfection of plane of motion as represented in the angle of 90 degrees, to the inertial planes is a progressive cycle, though imperfection in all of these effects, through imperfection in all of these effects. Let us then begin this magic, an ecstatic journey of creating things. Let us trace the evolution of true circles through the eclipses. Let us trace the evolution of the sphere from the shapeless ovoid through the whirling stages of oblateness to the perfection of true spheres. Let us trace the evolution of volume from the plane of no dimension into mass. Let us trace the evolution of plane itself through wide angles of elliptical expansion to the one plane of perfect gyroscopic motion. Let us trace the evolution of opposing dimensions of increasing and decreasing temperatures, volumes, densities, and all other sex expressions from the beginning of sex opposition in the wide expanse of south to the melding of sex in the bisexual contracted point of north and back again. Let us not forget that this universe of form is but a contraction of the concept of ideal into the form of the ideal. Form eventually expands into disappearance, but is eternally continuous as ideal. All effects of motion are sequential contractions of centrifugal generative force, which compose mass by attracting it, and expansions of centrifugal radiative force, which decompose mass by repelling it. Let us draw a mental picture of a quantity of energy representing the constant of the vast wave of which the solar system is a part, and let us mark off the harmonic circle of this wave on the south inertial planes of the cubes of motion. It will be remembered that the volume of the constant is represented by two opposed cones, the altitudes of which have been marked off by the electric pole at the intersection of the three inertial planes of the cubes of motion. These marked off altitudes represent the limitations of expansion of the wave. The center of each harmonic base is also the apex of the opposing cone. Imagine then the two opposing cones for each wave intersecting so that each apex meets the apex of another cone at the center of the magnetic base of its opposite. This is the position of the cones of energy in concept as simultaneously marked off throughout the universe. This is the position of the opposing male-female, positive, negative cones of energy at the beginning and at the ending of every effect of motion, as expressed in the wave before inertia has been overcome by motion, and after motion has been conquered by inertia. This is the position of the opposing cones of energy in the dimensionless universe of inertia. This is the birth of energy in man's spiritual universe. The transition to man's physical universe of solids of matter can now be easily visualized by imagining the gradual contraction of each electric pole to the points of north at the overtones of each wave. Visualize this transition and note its happenings. The constant of dimensions of the magnetic bases cannot change with changing dimensions, for they mark the extension of the wave. Therefore, as the axes of the cones contract and the contours of the cones sequentially expand until they disappear into the one plane of their bases, the planes of the magnetic bases are transferred to the equators of forming masses which, added together, equal the constant of the whole.